All right, guys, now let's put C1, aka Atlas, away. Now, in your brief atlas, your quick study guide, on page 27, you will see C2. Now, C2, the cervical vertebrae 2, is also known as the axis. Now, one of the most important features that you can find on the axis is this little head right here. It's called the dens or the odontoid process. Now, remember that facet we identified on C1. If I was to get C1, place it on top of C2, that head sits nicely right into the facet on C1. Now, guys, when the dens articulate right there, guys, that's known as a joint. And that joint is known as the ATLANTO-AXIAL joint. Where the name comes from, the atlanto piece of it comes from the atlas, and the axial part of the name comes from the axis. They place that O in the middle for the ease of the pronunciation of the word. So here we have the ATLANTO-AXIAL joint. It allows for rotation of the head and neck. Okay, now let's identify some things. Now, looking in your book, number 1, the dens. Here, the dens, this projection, this head, also known as the odontoid process. Number 2 in your book, the superior articular process or facet, right here. These are the articular surfaces right here. And then number 3, the inferior articular process or facet. Just like the C1, we will have to turn it to the inferior view. And here are those inferior articular surfaces right here. Now turning it back on the superior side of the vertebrae. Then number 4, you have the transverse process. Here is the transverse process right here. On the other side, here is the transverse process. Then for number 5, in that process, you have the transverse foramen. Again, that's the hole that runs through the process for the vertebral artery. Now, number 6 is a feature that's not on the handout that I provided in class. However, you are responsible for this feature. It's called the pedicle. The pedicle is located right here. And the purpose of the pedicle is to connect the body of the vertebrae to the process. So here again, you have the pedicle, and its purpose is to connect the body of the vertebrae to the process. Now, in your book, number 7, the lamina. Now remember, guys, this is the anterior view. This is the posterior. Now, the pedicle, one way to remember, the pedicle is always more anterior than the lamina. Here is the lamina right here. The lamina, the purpose of the lamina is to connect process to process. If you turn to this side here, the purpose of the lamina is to connect process to process. And then number 8 in your book, here we have the spinous process. And we have the next feature, number 9. Again, this large hole in the middle of the vertebra is the vertebral foramen. Number 10, the body. If you look at that little nice chunky piece, this is the body of the vertebrae. If I turn it a little, still, this is the body. That nice little chunky piece of the vertebrae is always the body. And then, guys, the facet for the dens is located right here. And remember, guys, this articulates with the facet on C1 to form the atlanto-occipital joint. Now, guys, let's recap really quickly. Here we have number 1, the dens or the odontoid process. Number 2, the superior articular facets or processes. Number 3, from an inferior view, the inferior articular surfaces. Number 4, the transverse process, as well as the transverse foramen, and we have one on each side of the vertebrae. And then number 6, that new feature I told you about, is the pedicle, responsible for connecting the body to the process. And then we have the lamina that connects process to process. And then we have number 8, that projection that comes out in the back of the spinal column, the spinous process. And then here, the hole in the center of the vertebrae, the vertebral foramen. And then guys, you can see the body from this view. You can also see the body from an anterior view, and you can also see that body from an inferior view. And last but not least, again, that facet for the dens that articulates with that facet on C1, forming the atlanto-occipital joint that allows rotation of the atlas.